Greetings and salutations. Welcome to another edition of the Severe MMA Takeaways here on the Severe MMA YouTube page. I am Spencer Kite, your friendly neighborhood Spencer man, joined as always by the young king, Mr. Harry Powell, Huxley in the background. And we are here today to talk about UFC 285. I think the words you said to me as we were getting ready was great googly moogly. So let's just dive into it. Jon Jones is your new UFC heavyweight champion. 2 minutes and 4 seconds to choke out Ciryl Gane in the main event. First fight in 3 years, first fight at heavyweight. He is the subject of your severe spotlight this week. Harry Powell, what impressed you so much about Jon Jones?
Everything. Like coming in. I mean, I picked Ciryl Gane by decision, right? And I couldn't have been more wrong.
Same. I picked him to finish.
Oh, Jesus. Coming in, there was just so many questions about Jon Jones, right? And I certainly wouldn't have been mad at anyone picking Jones. Ian O'Neill made a great point, or great points on the preview show. But to me, it's just really hard to trust even somebody of Jon Jones's caliber and proficiency and intuitiveness and talent. I hate the word talent, but skill and gift that he has for MMA, and physique, right? Like we forget that sometimes, that his body is kind of perfect for MMA. And it's just really hard to trust that 3 years out, upper weight class, all this stuff. Now, moving from light heavyweight to heavyweight isn't always the biggest jump. Right? If you go from something like a bantamweight to a featherweight, that can be a massive jump. Featherweight to lightweight can be a big jump.
Even middleweight to light heavyweight, it's sometimes 20 pounds, but usually it's more like 30 when you're in the cage.
Right. And that's not to diminish his efforts by any stretch of the imagination. Correct. I'm just saying that when you go up there, you're already training with the big boys, right? When you're in a gym, generally it's like 77 and above, go and train over there, and 77 and below, come and train over here, right? And so you're already in the big boy category, right? But now you're with the real big boys, the real big boys. And 3 years out, Ciryl Gane was somebody that we mentioned was the new wave of heavyweight mixed martial arts. And in some ways, I think that still stands true. But what we saw on the weekend was, I think I said the word dominance about 58,000 times in my speakers, in my severe spotlight this week. And I just think as an MMA fan base, and I shouldn't even say an MMA fan base, I forgot how much Jon Jones's ego is such a massive factor in fights.
Yeah, it's true.
It is one of, if not his biggest weapon, because he just marauded on out there, dumped out there with his fucking huge bumper and a bit of a dad bod. And Ciryl is like wanting to touch gloves with him, and he's like, whatever. Touches gloves with him with like the faintest tap possible, and then fucking slams a left low kick into his leg. Like, yeah, motherfucker, just so you know, we're fighting now. And from that moment on, the body language of Ciryl changed. It was, and I hate to use this because it's such a pop word, but these men are alphas and these women are alphas among alphas. And then the real alpha walks in.
Right.
And everyone's like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
And that person is Jon Jones. There was no moment in that fight where he didn't beat Ciryl Gane. Footwork battle, pressure battles. He made some really interesting technical things, and I'll get to that in a second. But just from an ethereal sort of philosophical standpoint, there was no moment that Jon Jones was willing to relinquish winning that fight.
Yeah, he won all 124 seconds of that fight.
There was not a backstep. There was not a sideward step that wasn't to create an angle on Ciryl Gane. When he took Ciryl down and from the back body lock and got to the dogfight, there was, like, people were complaining that Ciryl didn't get a whizzer. there wasn't a chance for a whizzer because John Jones's head position and the way he was sinking his hips back into Cyril's legs means that you can't get a whizzer. Cyril actually made a mistake by trying to force a whizzer, and that got him taken down a second time. And just every single moment. And the finish itself is so John Jones. It's like, I don't even give a shit enough to sit into mount properly. I don't need to bridge here. I'm just going to force you to bundle up like a little kid in secondary school in a corner, and I'm going to choke you. And then what? What are you going to do? What? What
You're going to tap.
Fucking lunch money. I'm going
to tap. Yeah.
And it was just like unequivocally dominant from pillar to post. And I hold my hands up. I doubted that John Jones was going to be able to keep up necessarily with MMA meta. I was doubting as to whether Jones was going to be able to be as dominant because we hadn't seen that dominance in portions. We didn't see it against Ovin St. Preux. We didn't see it against Reyes. We didn't see it against
Thiago Santos. It wasn't even necessarily there against Anthony Smith.
Right.
And it's interesting today, a couple days removed. I don't think there's any shame or any regret in questioning John Jones. Everybody had these questions. It's just that this guy came out and was like, I've heard all your questions for the last several months. I've listened to all of the talk over the last several years about this. And he said it afterwards, right? I've heard all the talk about this guy's not coming back, that whatever. I'm back and I'm the baddest man on the planet. And it was like, now, if Francis Ngannou is still around, I have some interest. I have some things that are interesting because Francis Ngannou just hits at a different level. But I don't know that Francis Ngannou can beat that guy because that guy looked like he's running through everybody. Like Stipe Miocic, it's like Stipe can say all the things that he said, and he said very little in his actual like interview with Megan O'Leary afterwards because that's who Stipe is when you stick a microphone in front of him. But like, you ain't got a chance, dude. Not a chance. I'm calling it today on March 7th. You ain't got a chance.
So what I don't want to do is allow myself to be swayed by the performance because then it looks like I'm flip-flopping. But what I will say, and I'll back up my claims with some of the technical aspects that really impressed me again with John Jones. So Cyril is known for being super light on his feet, being able to move really, really well, cut angles. He's a very agile heavyweight. His weapons are the left hand, the big left body kick. He could throw a couple of shots here and there off the front leg like Satip, but he's really good at bouncing in, finding the range, finding his rhythm, and just picking you off. And then as and when he feels necessary, he'll drop a big left hand or the body kick, and he'll start to debilitate you that way. He can crush leg kicks in, and we've seen that throughout his UFC tenure. John Jones was like, cool, how about you do that? And I'm going to stand as nose to nose with you as absolutely fucking possible. John Jones went between two sets of rhythms. The first was he was going to cut angles on Cyril. He was going to force it so that Cyril was never going to have the center line advantage on John Jones, meaning that left low kick or that left body kick or that launching left hand is more risky to throw because the angle isn't quite there and your opponent at any point could angle off and you could be in line for taking a shot. And we saw him do those things. The other side he then did is he just had his lead leg penetrating the middle, the center of gravity of Cyril Gane's stance. So if we draw a circle around both men, John Jones's circle was like double the size of Cyril's, and it was overlapping like a Venn diagram into Cyril's stance. That causes the pressure. That causes Cyril to question whether to throw, how to throw. It forces him to feel a little crowded, a little under pressure. He's already backed up semi behind that tram line in the octagon. So the questions started to add up of how do I get out of here? And the questions were answered by Cyril with one, the first kick he threw was a nut shot. I don't think that is I think we should take that as it is. Cyril's under pressure. He feels like I need to throw something. He's just eaten a massive left low kick, and he's like, oh, fuck, let me just flick my leg out and see what happens. And what happened is he grazed John Jones's cup. Fine. These things happen in MMA. But we then see that how John gets to the first real meaningful strike is that dumping right hand straight down the pipe. Is Cyril's crowded. Cyril goes to throw a right low kick. Jones catches it and absolutely slams a right straight down. We talked about dominance. It's like, okay, well, I've just shown you that without you hitting me, the first thing you throw is an illegal shot. The second thing you throw, I catch and slam a right hand in your face. I'm beating you from an angle perspective. I'm beating you from a pressure perspective. I'm not allowing you to build a momentum for you. And the second time you throw so aggressively with your left hand, you're off balance when I angle off, and I get to my bottle lock and I dump you down. It's just flawless perfection. His ability to enact a game plan, to make reads, and to know how to fight against styles is unparalleled. Absolutely unparalleled.
Yeah, it's his superpower in the cage. And it's a thing that I think I can only speak for myself. You can tell me whether you agree or not, or you feel the same or not. I think I forgot about it. I think I just sort of like expected all of the questions that I had, all the time away, all the outside of the octagon issues, the change in division, not training with the best training partners, though there can be a case made for, well, who does Cyril Gane train with? All led to me feeling like this just, it didn't feel like a thing he was going to be capable of doing. And I forgot that this man's superpower is making those reads, understanding how to beat everybody in the cleanest ways possible most times. And then also, as you mentioned off the top, his ego isn't going to let him lose these fights. His ego isn't going to let him not be prepared. And like we say ego, and ego often carries a negative connotation. There are times where it is a very good thing, and it was a very good thing for John Jones on Saturday night. That desire, that I can't let this happen in front of all of my family, this grand return moment, has to be joyous, has to be successful, has to be celebratory, is prompted by that ego that he, right? Like you remember when he beat DC the first time, he got to his press availability, or he got to the press conference afterwards, and he said, I hope he's somewhere crying right now. He didn't want to be the guy that was somewhere licking his wounds. He's never been that guy. He never wants to have to be that guy. I bet you to this day, if you asked him, truth serum, how much do you hate that UFC 200 press conference where you're constantly wiping tears out of your eyes because you fucked up and it's all on your shoulders? He will tell you it is one of the worst moments of his life. Now, you could argue there probably should be some other ones that he considers in there, but this dude's back. He wants to be active. Looked like a menace on Saturday night. Should run through Stipe Miocic. It's the new John Jones era.
I don't even think it's the new John Jones era. I think it's just we forgot.
It's just the relocated John Jones era.
Yeah. And like to those points, I think in this conversation, it's wise to leave out the outside of cage shenanigans and incidents, because Graham made a good point on the big podcast, and that's that when we're talking about fighting, we should talk about fighting. When we're talking about the performance and what happened inside the cage on Saturday night, we should talk about the fighting. When he steps out of the cage and he's in the press conference, whatever questions are lobbied at him about his character and his outside of cage actions are well, fair, due, and just.
Right.
When he steps in and they lock the door, though, that doesn't matter right now.
Well, because he's also always shown that he can put that stuff aside.
Right.
It's never deterred him. It's never been a hindrance to him.
And to the point on ego, I actually think it's a level deeper than that, right? You said, oh, he wants to come back. He wants to have this joyous celebratory occasion. I actually don't think he thinks about that at all. I think what he thinks about is that there is absolutely no way that this guy can win anything. I think that's who he is in life. I don't think it's even as overarchingly global as, oh, I've got to fight. My family's here. I'd like to, get the belt and do the things. I think it's a rugged, raw, animalistic fiber of his being that if he commits to doing something and there is a person across from him, that person will not win 1 second of competition that they are engaged in. That's who he is.
I mean, if we're going to take it deeper, I think it is you look at the 3 siblings, you look at the 3 boys.
Right.
He is the middle child. Arthur got a Super Bowl very quickly. Chandler got a gigantic contract and has been talked about as one of the best defensive ends in his time, all these different things. And John was the middle child and sort of in a weird way, not the runt of the litter, but the little skinny one that wasn't as athletic as his brothers. I think it is a constant battle of Arthur versus John versus Chandler. And they're always just trying, like, he's just constantly trying to get ahead of whatever sibling has had success.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's sort of etched over his life.
Mm-hmm.
And that etching has led him to be maybe the greatest mixed martial artist of all time, right?
I mean, to me, it also shows through in some of the, like, and I know, as you said, the outside the cage doesn't like pertain to his performance inside, but it also shows through to some of the things that he finds as his hobbies outside of the cage. He is constantly trying to make himself the biggest, baddest, toughest. I have this attack dog that I can train and heal to do all of these things. I go and cosplay as a military man all the time. It's always just about this. And then he gets in there on Saturday night and it is actually this, and it's not cosplay. It's like,
I think there is an element. I think some of it, and again, this is assumptive psychology here, but because if he stands next to his brothers, when he puffs his chest out, the boys are like, I am not even breathing yet.
Yeah.
But when he looks across the cage at anyone else, they're like, motherfucker, you're not anything in comparison to my brothers.
Yeah.
And it's that. And then behind is all the psychological stuff of if I lose, my brothers are going to beat me up, or my brothers are going to say, oh, you're shit at this, or you're not as good as us, or whatever.
Right.
If I may, I just want to talk through the grappling sequences because...
Absolutely. This is your show as much as mine.
There seems to be some lobbying against Cyril and saying that he did things poorly. He did, but I think a lot of it was that John Jones is just so much better. Right. So let me get to my notes. Please hold. The other thing I found super interesting, by the way, that again might well be a accident, but when we look at how deliberate John Jones is and all the things he does, I doubt it is. There's a moment when Cyril starts to win the angle battle on the tram line. And as he goes to angle off and throw a right hook, John steps in and stands on his foot. So as Cyril tries to angle off and pull his lead leg away, he can't. And he has to like rip it out, and that slows his angle change. And then John immediately squares up with him. I just needed to mention that because if that, I would love to ask John.
I'm sure it's intentional.
But
I'm sure it is.
Boy, oh boy. We are working at different levels here, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway.
I'm sure it is.
Me too, but like wonderful. Anyway, Cyril is pressured and struggling or whatever, throws his left hand. John, one of the reasons why he's doing that penetration step thing and he's so close to the pocket is because he's so confident that whatever Cyril throws will probably be a 1 or a 2. And at 2 max, he'll just get out. And if it's a 1, he does what he does. So Cyril launches this left hand, is completely off balance as he launches it. John ducks under, gets to a back body lock. He immediately starts to sag his weight in between Cyril's legs, really disrupting the center of gravity and forcing Cyril to make a decision. If John made the decision for him and picked a hip, Cyril might be able to overcorrect and start to ride with the weight and whatever.
You weren't listening to comms. They talked about it the second it happened.
Right.
Of John.
Not listening to comms.
Look at you, even listening to comms.
I was not listening to comms.
Oh, okay.
No.
They did talk about it. As soon as it happened, DC got into why he is sitting back, why he is laying all of that weight backwards.
Right.
As opposed to trying to climb up and
cool. So I won't, DC will have explained it probably better than I will, but Cyril has to make a choice. And Cyril makes the choice that he wants to move towards his right-hand side, which is probably smart because that's closer to the cage than his left side was. John notices and probably understands that Cyril's going to choose right before Cyril chooses right. John then sags his weight to the right-hand side, drops Cyril down. Now, the first mistake Cyril makes is he just face plants, right? There's no attempt to go to a referee's position where you're up on your hands, on your knees. There's no 4-point where it's forearms. It's just face plant. So John here is sagging that weight continuously on that right hip. So as Cyril starts to build up, it's really difficult for him to build. Not really difficult, but he's expending energy more than he would have if he'd have just landed with his posts. Now, from here, this is where the criticism starts to be lobbied that I don't think is necessarily justified. John Jones wraps a torque, what's called a torque, with his left leg, where he collects Cyril's right leg with his left leg and raises it slightly off the ground. So Cyril can't post on his feet on the floor to gain enough momentum. We're in a position generally called dogfight, and it's basically predominantly where you're shoulder to shoulder, chest to chest, both facing the same way, both on your knees. Somebody has a whizzer, somebody has an underhook, and it's a battle of head height and hip height and balance and all that stuff. John Jones sags his weight back into the leg and posts his forehead on the top of his head, top of his skull, into the armpit of Cyril Gane. So not only does that start to shut the shoulder off and shut the rotator cuff off, it also means that Cyril can't physically open his tricep up and whizzer out if there's a fucking head in the way, right? Especially not a head the size of John Jones's head. And so people were saying, oh, he's shit, he can't even get a whizzer, he can't. That's not it. It's that Jones was doing such a good job of forcing Cyril to post his hands on the mat by driving with his head that Cyril couldn't get a whizzer. Cyril recognizes, and clearly this is again where the lack of grappling knowledge of Cyril is instead of Cyril trying to build his base up and start to stand and then turn in and get a whizzer, he's clearly been told, dogfight, you get a whizzer. And so he starts to think, oh, fuck, I need a whizzer. So as he starts to turn in, Jones has already weaved his right hand to his far leg, Cyril's left leg, knowing that Cyril's going to want to get a whizzer. As Cyril overcommits to get the whizzer, he's opened his body up, which makes this left leg really heavy now. And Jones just pulls it and grounds him immediately. And it's just the most gorgeous shit you've seen. Because it's Jones just being so aware of what the dilemmas are and so aware of what the challenges are. Cyril then does a good job, gets himself to the cage, gets up a little bit, gives the back body lock, things happen. And Jones goes for a Renzo Gracie hook, right? Like the Renzo Gracie hook, this is obviously not made by Renzo Gracie, but Renzo used it a lot in his MMA career. And so it's something that I just use. And that's where instead of just getting your top hook, he laces it through to the back leg. And that means that you can anchor yourself a little bit to that position. Now, something happens with the camera, and I don't quite see what happens for the mat return. It kind of looks like Cyril just stumbles, but I don't know whether that's true because it doesn't look like John was off balancing him. John still had the body lock. He was very much side on. It didn't look like there was any sort of Kazushi or off balance pressure that was happening. Anyway, Cyril ends up on the floor. This is where I think the massive failings begin for Cyril Gane, because at this point, and you see it in the Jalen Turner-Gamrot fight, as soon as Jalen Turner has his back against the cage, he's posting up on his hands, he's raising his hips, he's getting his chest high, he's looking to get to a combat base with those feet, split his stance out, get wide and get up. Look for whizzers, look for underhooks, get up. Cyril just kind of keeps his elbows tight to his side and puts his knees up to his chest a little bit and like looks. You know, and this is, I think, where the dominance has begun to crumble him mentally just a little bit. Jones then just doesn't even. This is the level of disrespect, right? Jones doesn't even give a shit enough to take the mount. He just stands there, crotch in face, like, watch what happens now, And he knows this is what he's doing on purpose, right? He goes for an arm-in guillotine. Cyril does a good enough job of sort of posting on the hips and looking to tuck his chin and weave his chin to the inside. Jones says, yeah, that's grand, no problem. Throws his arm-in guillotine arm all the way through, cracking Cyril, and then lands a couple of left hands. And he lands the left hands because he knows Cyril's going to have to move his head. Because if he keeps his chin down and he just takes a ton of shots to the head, the referee's going to stop it anyway, right? So he has to lift his chin up, or he has to move his head. With that rotation, John slides the choke in. And again, people are saying he taps quick. I think he does tap quick, but there are elements with which here Cyril has very little option for defense. He's put himself in a very bad position in that he's curled up in a ball. The fence is behind him. His cranium is already squashed. Jones has left his lat and his tricep on top of that head. So the head is crunched. He's got the arm in. So generally, when you're finishing guillotines arm in, we've seen loads of fighters do it, that it happens when they pull guard, right? They're pulling the guillotine onto them. When their arm is in, people will throw their arm over the top of the choke, and that will take some of the pressure off. Well, Cyril's crumpled up into a ball against the cage, and he's on bottom. There will be no throwing it over because John's fucking dick and cup is in the way, right? There's no space for that.
It's similar to me to why the like mounted guillotine is so much more effective than the pulling guillotine.
Right.
You're right there, and there's nothing they can do because, as you said, the area to get that arm over is just too vast.
Right. And there's body in front of it.
Yeah.
There's no body in front of it when you're on top. And so Cyril doesn't fight the hips well. He doesn't fight the hands well. He doesn't try to rotate his head inside. He isn't looking to try to peel anything off. And he taps quickly. But let's not take away from the elements with which John Jones just immobilized the defenses that Cyril was going to have and put him in a position where he asked a very, very important question of Cyril. And that was, how much are you willing to endure to survive this and potentially win? And the answer that Cyril gave him is not a lot.
Right. I mean, he had him dead to rights. I think you're correct that there's that internal crumble. There's that confidence shattered. And a little bit of, we've seen it in so many athletes, a little bit of, all right, just get me out of here. I want to be done with this. I do think, as you said, there are certainly mistakes that Cyril Gane makes in that fight. But it's interesting to me that I haven't heard a lot of, he makes mistakes, there are holes in his games, but the other side of it being, John Jones did really great things. Like, one of the things I saw immediately afterwards was a lot of people being like, was that really a great performance from John? Yeah, it was a great performance from John Jones. Yes, Cyril made mistakes. Yes, there are clearly holes in his game that he will need to fix, that he will need to remedy. There are now rightfully further questions about how far Fernand Lopez and the MMA Factory can take him or any athlete for that matter, because they've stumbled in their biggest opportunities. But John Jones looked terrific on Saturday night.
I think we also have to give credit here to Ian O'Neill. On the previous show, he was kind of the only one.
100%.
Look, Fernand Lopez, there's questions about game plans. We've seen it with Amavov. We've seen it with Francis. He left and he looked better when he moved.
Io nailed every piece of this.
He really did. He
every
really,
piece of
really
this.
did. Yeah.
Listen to Ian more, folks. Maybe less of us, but more of Ian. Or stay listening to us, but also listen to more of Ian. He's pretty sharp, that guy. We love him. Oh, that's the main event. How you feeling? Because we got a big one here.
I've not stopped thinking about Shevchenko, Grasso, and John Jones, Cyril. Like, I'll say it now before we get into them. These top 4 fights are just the apex of MMA.
Yes.
The absolute apex of MMA.
Yes. So let's move to the co-main event. We have a new UFC Women's Flyweight Champion. Alexa Grasso did maybe not the unthinkable, but she did it. She beat Valentina Shevchenko, submitted her with a face crank late in the 4th round, left her looking as John Anik described, or as Daniel Cormier described on the comms. Joe Rogan described on the, I think it was Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan described on comms with like the worst sunburn imaginable from that, the pressure of that face crank. This was, to me, both a tremendous performance by Alexa Grasso. There is no denying. We said on the preview show, we said all the way in, she needs to be perfect. She wasn't perfect, but she was pretty goddamn close. It also, to me, underscored, reiterated that the pack is caught up to Valentina Shevchenko, that dominance, all those things that made her so great and so unbeatable for so long are starting to erode, are starting to lessen, because we saw right out of the gate Alexa Grasso have success, have Shevchenko in positions where we haven't really seen her, where she looked a little bit, maybe not confused, but just the processing is taking quicker. And Alexa Grasso just stayed true to what she needed to do. And the minute Valentina threw that back kick, it reminded me very much of Chris Weidman, Luke Rockhold. She makes that mistake, and Grasso just says, we're done. We're done. We're going home. We're bringing a 3rd title to Mexico this year. Just an amazing fight, an amazing performance for Alexa Grasso. I'm kind of really fascinated by the rematch that will come, because now we're really going to see where Val's at. But on this night, it belongs to Alexa Grasso.
So
I love when you start with so, because it means there's something you've been pondering, and I've said something that just sort of picks at it a little bit, and you're going to come back with something. That's why I love this show.
I just don't know with Valentina. Like, my notes for this fight is just littered with, my God, it's beautiful to watch her fight, because the technical efficiency and the prowess with which she throws everything is just perfect. Like, it's just perfect. And the level with which she's able to prime herself to throw strikes, but doing so does so efficiently, and everything, all the powers generated from the core and the whip on the kicks is done through the hips, and the strikes are never loose and lazy. They're always sharp, and there's no over elbow rotations. And it's just so beautiful to look at. I think the thing that we're seeing is 20 years worth of MMA.
Yeah.
Like, I think what we're seeing is where John Jones is able to use the vast cerebral capacity he has over his opponents to his advantage and still go out and be so dominant. Valentina knows what she wants to do, is still, I'd say, like 85% in command of her body. But that extra 5%, 10% is diminishing, because skill for skill, technique for technique, if you were a coach and you wanted to show a fighter in that fight how to throw strikes, how to maneuver around the cage, you point to Valentina Shevchenko.
Right.
And I think the other thing to me is Valentina adjusted so well in that 3rd round that the 4th, when she was just throwing ones, because she knew that Grasso was waiting for her to throw, to land, and then Grasso would come back with the harder shots, was winning her that 4th. And then, things happened, and MMA happened, and Valentina goes home empty-handed, and Grasso goes home with the belt. But it feels though, I don't know, because Grasso just looked so game, so tough, and so fit, and so up for this. There was a moment, I've written it in caps lock. Oh shit, it's a crucifix setup.
Yeah.
My next thing is, oh shit, we're here.
Yeah.
And Valentina grits her teeth, and you can see the grimace, and she's landed some right hands. And Grasso bucks and bucks and bucks and gets her shoulder back. And Valentina settles into side control, and you can see that there's just a slight change in body language from
That's right.
both women.
Right. Grasso knows she's gotten out of the doom position, and Val knows, oh man, this is going to be even tougher than I thought it was after that first 5 minutes where this chick put it on me a little bit.
And like, I don't know. I just, this is very hard for me to say because it's clearly, that's not what the result shows. I think Valentina's a better fighter. I just think that youthful exuberance, the will, the grit, the determination, the athleticism, the less miles on the clock, it pays dividends when you also have the toughness to be able to go on.
I was just going to say, there's a point where being the superior technician, we talk about it all the time, right? You specifically often touch on the better athlete. I don't even know that Alexa Grasso is the better athlete. She's just younger and has fewer miles and less everything, right? Like we talk about having to get up for every single title fight and how difficult it's got to be at a certain point. Sean El-Shadi, who will be on a conversation with this week, has pointed out in the past and pointed out going into and coming out of Saturday, the Valentina Shevchenko's MMA career started before women we consider pioneers, like Roxanne Modafferi, like Shayna Baszler, like Julie Kedzie. Those things matter. She's been fighting for 20 years. She's been competing and doing martial arts since she was 4. This stuff all takes a toll. And at some point, you slide back half a step and the pack comes up a step, and suddenly that great big gap is now narrowed. And it just takes 1 or 2 mistakes, one little miscalculation. And I think that's what Saturday was. That's not to say that Alexa Grasso didn't have very good moments throughout this fight.
Excellent moments.
But those miscalculations, when you're starting to slide back a little bit, go from being, ooh, that was close, can't make that mistake again, to God damn it, she took my title home.
Because like I felt like, and I didn't really do scoring because I was just enjoying it too much, but it felt to me as though the tide was slightly turning and Valentina was doing things. And
she made all the right adjustments until that back kick.
Yep.
Because in the set, like she figured out, she lost the first round. My scoring, watching at home, she loses the first round, comes out in the second and third and is like, great, we're going to grapple. And there's a point where Alexa Grasso gets taken down on the lovely open space double leg that you just see her face like, where it's like, I fell for this. It's that like, God damn it, I know I overextended and she hit it perfect and she read it and here we are. And I'm stuck here. It's just, like I just said, the mistake goes from being, ooh, I nearly got caught, to now I'm paying the price. And Alexa Grasso, to her credit, we've seen it before, right? The Joanne Wood fight, where JoJo overcommits, overswings, kind of gets hit a little bit, bounces off the cage, and as soon as her back is open, Grasso is in and under the neck and we're done. And as soon as Val spun, Grasso was like, back, let's go. And I didn't think she was going to get the finish. I didn't think she was going to get under the chin. And then I didn't think she was going to get a face crank. That girl's got a good squeeze.
If I could, I'm going to take umbrage with face crank.
Okay.
It's not. There are portions of which it is a face. It's not a face crank. So
you're going to go with mandible strangle here?
Going to go with mandible strangle here. A face crank is what we saw Bo Nickel try on Jamie Pickett to begin with before he switched off to the head and arm. This is Val's chin is in the crux of the elbow of the soft bit of the between the forearm and the bicep. And you see she tries a short choke, but when she's trying the short choke, it's very hard to retract your body enough to drag the elbow down and through the jaw. So when she then switches off to actually lock it up properly, she can close both of her elbows and has a little bit more space and a little bit more leverage to drag that elbow through. And what is happening is she's using Valentina's jaw to cut her own esophagus off. So it's not a face crank in that it's pure pain. Yes, Valentina's jaw would break eventually, but she will also go to sleep if she continues. And there is very little, when it's fully locked in, there's very little that we can be doing, especially when we all saw how tight it was. There's very little that we can do to stop that. And credit to Alexa Grasso. She trusted herself. And the one thing she did, which was what many, many, many people don't do, is when they get a strangle like that, instead of just applying squeeze, release, squeeze, release, squeeze, release, it's just a constant squeeze. Because at that moment, panic starts to set in because people are waiting for the squeeze to be released a little so they can fight and breathe and whatever. Didn't happen. She just squeezed and squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. And then Val had to tap. Just every reason why we love MMA.
We've had 3 pay-per-views this year. On the first one, Brandon Moreno won the flyweight title. On the second one, Yair Rodriguez won the interim featherweight title. On the third one, Alexa Grasso brought the flyweight title. Jesus, I keep screwing that up. With her to Mexico. I think they just have to do all 3 in Mexico City. On Saturday, I said Brandon Moreno and Alexa Grasso headline Mexico City. Let's go. And a few people were like, you have to put Yair there. I don't necessarily like the idea of the defending champ, the reigning champ, the dominant champ, Alex Volkanovski, having to go to the interim title holder's backyard. But the more I thought about it, 1, Islam Makhachev went to Perth. 2, Volko's the guy that would be like, yeah, fuck, let's go. And so I think you do all 3 whenever you can sort that out in Mexico City. So probably in the early fall, I would say September now makes sense. Let everybody heal up. Let everybody get better. Everybody get in prime shape.
Be amazing.
And let's blow the goddamn roof off this place.
Yep, I'm down. Sign me up.
And if you're a Mexican fighter right now, it's going to be hard to pick against some Mexican fighters for the next couple of weeks because it's been a banner year, and you know that is just sending electricity and motivation and pride coursing through their bodies. The one thing I do want to touch on before we get out of this fight and move forward is the biggest loser in all of this is Erin Blanchfield, who a couple weeks ago has a tremendous performance, secures herself in that upper tier, and now goes from probably fighting for the title to having to sit and wait for this immediate rematch because it should very well happen, which means she's probably fighting Manon Fiorot later this year, would be my guess. Whenever Fiorot's ready to be back in action, which I think she targeted as the summer, it'll probably be Blanchfield Fiorot, number 1 contender, title eliminator, whatever you want to call it. And they just got to hope that we don't end up going to a trilogy right away. But it's a tough night if you're Erin Blanchfield.
I mean, in my opinion, it's not, because she's 23 and there's all
for sure. I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure if you asked her, she'd be like, whatever.
I think if I'm Erin Blanchfield, the reason why I'm pissed is because she said she would wanted to be the one to beat Valentina. Right. And so you're like, fuck. It just got there before me. Fuck.
Right.
So like, if
you don't get to be the one that took out the Indomitable.
Right. And I think if I'm Blanchfield, and again, I'm not taking anything away from Grasso, but Blanchfield, when she talked about it, she wanted to do it clean. It wasn't going to be a capitalization on a mistake. It was going to be, I'm just going to drown this woman. And that's wild because it's Valentina. But like,
right.
Yeah.
45 minutes in, 2 fights down, the Severe MMA takeaways, E. Spencer Kite, Harry Powell. UFC 285. We moved to non-title action, but the brilliance, the sweetness, the loveliness does not stop. Shavkat Rakhmonov, 17-0, 17 finishes, goes through hell and back with Jeff Neal and squeezes him to sleep in the waning moments of the third round. This was everything you, me, anybody that had questions and wanted to see high-level tests for Shavkat Rakhmonov wanted to see, and that boy passed with flying colors.
Not flying colors.
Flying colors.
He did not pass with flying colors. He absolutely did not. I thought Jeff Neal was the perfect test going in. We spoke about that on the preview show, and he proved to be absolutely the perfect test here. Jeff Neal has a fantastic way of covering space. He's very elusive when he makes his way into the pocket. He hits really, really hard. He can fight in bunches. He's defensively aware. He can wrestle. He can anti-wrestle. He knows what he's doing in that cage. He knows who he is as a fighter. You're not going to go in and see brand new things from Jeff Neal, and he's a really high-level operator. Shavkat, to me, showed flashes of just championship level brilliance. When he fights at his own range and he's slipping shots and landing shots on counters and cutting angles and rolling under shots and moving away, and when he throws knees and the mean elbows and the mean kicks, like, fuck, his knees and elbows and his overall adherence to body work is just absolutely beautiful to watch in this fight. The problem I have in this fight is his chin is far too high. And being able to take a shot is not a trait I want in my fighter to be displayed all of the time. Now, fair enough.
I agree. Not displayed all of the time. But I'm happy to see it here, to know that if we get there, and like, I don't want him going through it all the time.
He's going to.
But I'm happy to see him get through it here.
If Jeff Neal, and again, this is no disrespect for Jeff Neal, if Jeff Neal is bringing it out of you, the guys above Jeff Neal are going to bring it out of you as well. Because Shavkat has a tendency, and this is where Jeff Neal was having so much success, was Shavkat stands really tall, and he likes to fight really long, and he likes to throw those straights and likes to hit the check hooks as you come in. But Jeff found a way to roll under some of those shots and come inside, and he found the chin behind those shots. And he found the chin over and over again in the air. That's a big problem, and it needs to be fixed, because Jeff Neal hits really, really hard, but there are some guys that will just put you out real quick if they land on you. And this is a point to me that is exactly the reason why we need to see these fights at this time.
Agreed.
Because Shavkat right now doesn't win a championship.
Correct.
Right. If he goes in against Gilbert Burns and Gilbert Burns finds that chin, he's going home really quickly. And so for a man of his age and a man of his skill level, he has just shown that he can mix it up with the best. And when he does what he does well, sliding in and out of range,
he's outstanding.
Ankles, rolling through, he is beautiful to watch. But, and there's a big old but, that big glaring hole needs to be fixed ASAP if we're going to see him in the top 5 anytime soon.
Agreed. 100%. No notes on what you said. I do like the fact, and I know this sounds a little strange, I do like the fact that he went through that fight. Because it gives them, it creates the opportunity to address that issue, right? It's the old, if you come away and everything's great all the time, then you don't necessarily go, okay, I need to work on these things. I guarantee you they came out of that fight, and his corners and his coaches go, here's what we got to fix. You can't be doing this. Exactly what you said. Like word for word, they can just play what you just said. Look, this fella in London is able to recognize and identify this. So if he can, all these other fighters that are ahead of you can. We have to, you got to fix it. Now there's the thing to fix. The thing that makes him so just, I don't even have a word for it for me right now. You get to 4 minutes and change in the third round, and it's been an absolute 14-minute just dogfight battle. He spent most of the first round fighting without a mouthpiece, just taking shots. And still, near the end of that fight, he goes, I still don't want to go to the judges. And still finds ways to just be, and like in a position where most people aren't thinking, oh, I have this opening. And he just finds a little like, we're going to put you to sleep here, Jeff. You're going to go night night. And it's going to be quick, and you're not going to have seen it coming because most people aren't attacking it here. And I'm going to get right under your chin, right around your neck. And I'm just going to squeeze you off to dreamland.
I think it's the thing that gives me the most intense feeling that he will challenge for a title at some point. And that's that there is a potency and a brutality.
Yes.
Method that he searches for things in fights. Because sometimes you watch guys like a Josh Emmett against Yair Rodriguez, and he was like, I know I'm going to take a bunch of shots here, but I'm just banking on this Hail Mary landing. With Shavkat, you watch him, and he may hit me with one kitchen sink, but I know I have 11 kitchen sinks in my back pocket. And I can mix in the wrestling. And we should give a prop to Jeff Neal for his counter wrestling in this fight, because even though at times he was very wobbly and very all over the gaff on the feet, he still managed to ride out those clinch situations. He still managed to ride out those takedown attempts and did really, really, really well to stop them. But with Shavkat, I would like to see him in a 5-round fight now.
Yes.
I'd like to see him in a main event of a fight night show somewhere against somebody. I haven't thought of a name yet.
I
know. I'm sorry.
I was waiting. I was hoping.
I mean,
to me, there's an obvious name. It's not going to happen, but there's an obvious name. And it's Colby Covington.
Yeah, that's not going to happen, is it?
No. Like, not at all. And every single soul that has a Twitter account and an IG account needs to go and call that man a chicken shit, because he will talk all of his smack about all the things that he's going to do to everybody, but he won't sign that contract. And I understand it, but hey, I'm not the one that says I'm going to murder everybody and clobber everybody and the real champ and all of this stuff. And it's picking and choosing.
I mean, I think that's a very tough fight for Shavkat, to be honest.
So do I.
But I want to see 5 rounds because the level with which he ramps up the bodywork, the level with which he ramps up the indomitable search for brutality, just seems to get stronger and stronger as he goes on. And so let me see that in 5 rounds against somebody who can run with him over 5 rounds.
So this other name, I don't think is somebody that can run with him over 5 rounds, but they had a little conversation afterwards. Depending on how the rankings get sorted out here in the next couple of days, they may be side by each, and it's Stephen Wonderboy Thompson.
No, absolutely.
I agree, but I have a feeling that's where we get to.
Absolutely not.
I agree. Again, let me say again. I agree, but I'm pretty certain that's where we get to.
I want no part of that.
Because the other fight that I would love to see that I don't want to subject the person to is Bilal Muhammad. Because Bilal has done enough, in my estimation, to just sit there and wait for this trilogy to resolve itself, to then get the title shot, face the winner. But if the UFC really wants to sort of squeeze Bilal a little bit, I wouldn't be surprised if they put that contract in front of him and just be like, hey man, They're fighting in a couple weeks. They're not going to want to turn around before, late fall, probably actually more like November, December. Do you really want to be out from October to December, or do you want to get one more in?
What about? I don't know. Yeah, no.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say, what about Michael Chiesa?
I mean, first and foremost, he's got to get through Jing Liang next month.
Oh, is he going to fight? Right. Okay, fine.
Secondly, I think Shavkat Rakhmonov kicks the Christ out of Mike Chiesa.
Maybe, but like
just strictly from a striking perspective. I love Mav. Obviously, he's been on conversation with. He is somebody I have a great relationship with. I think it is a terrible matchup for him.
Maybe. Let's move on.
All right. We move to a very competitive, very intriguing lightweight battle.
Fight of the night.
Fight of the night by far.
Yeah.
For you and me. Because we value technical and these things over, fight of the night officially was Shavkat Rakhmonov, Jeff Neal. They got $50,000 each. Jeff Neal took home a bonus despite missing weight. That's how much they loved that fight.
As they should have.
Sure. You and me, very similar to last year's whole fight of the year discussion. You and I were like, Gamrot Tsarukyan, and everybody else was like, you guys are nerds. So here we are. Mateusz Gamrot defeats Jalen Turner, split decision, close, competitive, fun fight where for me, Jalen Turner doesn't lose any ground. If anything, his stock goes up. Because I haven't rewatched it yet, and I'm probably going to this afternoon, and I think you can make a case for him winning that fight.
So I would really like your opinion as and when you watch it back, because I watched it through.
I think I'm going to record it as a podcast.
I watched it through this morning.
Okay.
Just before I came on, and I didn't score it live. Not live, not that I watched it live. I didn't score it the first time I watched it because I was just enjoying it.
Right.
But I scored it the second time, and my last note is really close fight to call, but I feel like I have this Jalen Turner 29-28 or even 30-27.
Same.
And that's not a close 30. That's not a wide 30-27.
Right.
It's a very close
fight.
The
30-27 turned in this fight by Ron McCarthy is one of those ones that somebody's going to look at it and be like, what? And it's like, this is where the 10-point must system sucks. This is where I would love fights to be scored out of rounds to be scored out of 50. So we can have 50-49. Because that's what this fight was the whole way through. Every round is tooth and nail.
So, okay. So here are my thoughts on the fight itself, and then here are my thoughts on the judging. So my thoughts on the fight itself is, we said before, Jalen Turner is somebody that's working out how to fight at length. He's worked out how to fight.
Yeah. Yes.
He's doing the things.
He's sorted that piece out.
He oscillates so well between switching stances, between being the aggressor, pushing Gamrot back, landing really beautiful kicks, working the body with his teeps and his body shots, to then just allowing Gamrot a touch of space, clattering hands into him. He rocked him in all 3 rounds. There was a moment in the second round where he had 25 to 35 seconds of just bludgeoning Gamrot a bit. And that to me was the easiest round to score, by the way. That was to me, that was the score, the round to Turner that was the easiest to score. Gamrot was fantastically elusive in his takedown attempts, as always. He's got such a beautiful, unorthodox style of entry into those situations. He turns the corner on double leg so brilliantly. Turner really impressed me with his defensive awareness in this fight. There was only one moment, and there's nothing he could have done about it better, but there was one moment where in grappling situations, he left himself unattended, and it was in the third, I think. Oh, no, it was in the first, I think. First or second, I can't remember. And he was getting up from a takedown, and Gamrot had managed to pin his back arm, and Jalen had got a whizzer, which was what was getting him up with his other arm, and Gamrot landed, I don't know, 4 or 5 shots that split Jalen's lip. as Jalen Turner was getting up. And there was nothing he could do about it. It was either get up and take the shots, or it was stay down and, potentially lose position for longer. But there was a moment, I think in the first, sorry. Gamrot takes him down. Jalen works to a half guard with a really nice reverse butterfly. We're going to see that now. Alexander Volkanovski and there was another fighter that Craig was talking about that was using the reverse butterfly. Arman Saryukin against Islam Makhachev. Both of those guys used the reverse butterfly to off-balance their partners and then get back to either half guard or a wrestling position. Jalen Turner used it here against Gamrot to work himself back to a half guard. When he gets to the half guard, Gamrot looks to land a big overhand right. Jalen just dumps off and says, nah, we're not doing this. Tucks his head inside, does a really, really good job. Gamrot then goes for an S-grip just to solidify the position, and Jalen immediately starts to pump his knee shield. That allowed him to start working for underhooks, allowed him to start working for space. Gamrot then says, oh, fuck, I'm losing the position. Let's go of his S-grip and goes to start landing shots with his right hand again. Jalen immediately bails on the pumping and immediately goes back to bicep posting on Gamrot's arm with his left hand. And just that awareness, right? You're in a bad spot. A lot of MMA fighters will immediately just start to turtle, look to get an underhook and get up and whatever. But Jalen's like, okay, I understand. It feels like Jalen's like, okay, I understand here that the scoring criteria pertains to damage and it doesn't pertain to positional dominance. And so if I can shut down the damage that's coming towards me from these positions, it doesn't matter how long Gamrot is on top of me because he's not landing anything. He's not past my guard. He's not looking to submit me. He's just looking to land damage, and I'm nullifying a lot, or if not all of that damage. And so that defensive awareness from Jalen Turner, that ability to circumnavigate and be and this was the thing I took away from Jalen the most, is how present he was in the fight. We've seen him in other fights just slightly lose focus a little bit, slightly chase the finish a little bit too hard. He dropped Gamrot twice in this, like two kind of flash knockdowns, and rocked him 3 times. Not once did I see him really overextend himself for the finish. He was patient. He was comfortable that it would come when it would come. Some of his takedown defense was gorgeous. Some of it was less good. But his ability to work himself to the cage, to keep himself defensively aware, to not give up positions he shouldn't be giving up, was outstanding.
So Derek Cleary and David Letherby, 2 very good judges, scored the fight completely opposite one another. Cleary had it 10-9 Turner, 10-9 Gamrot, 10-9 Gamrot. Letherby the inverse, 10-9 Gamrot, and then 2 10-9s for Turner. Ron McCarthy, 3 10-9s for Gamrot across the board. I think all of what you just said about damage and Jalen Turner understanding I can be in this position, but as long as he's not getting off big shots, punishing shots, creating damage, I'm kind of okay. There were points where Gamrot had success and did land some damage from top position. But to me, this was one of those fights that even as I watched it live, and it's why I'm looking forward to watching it back again, and will most likely podcast it or write it up for the site, SevereMMA.com, by the way, is because we've spoken basically since last May, since Holly Holm, Ketlin Vieira, about damage. And to me, as someone that has gone through a judging course, that has sat and spoken with John McCarthy, breaking down specific fights side by side, tell me why you scored it this way. I know it's not boxing where a knockdown is an automatic 10-9 for the guy but it's got to carry weight. I don't care that it's a flash knockdown. I don't care that it's a Gamrot recovers quickly and gets back to his feet and eventually wrestles up and to me, those are the biggest, most telling moments of each of those rounds, is that Jalen Turner lands with that power we talked about on the preview show, and Mateusz Gamrot decides and understands, I need to fucking wrestle. I can't stand with this guy because he is too long. He is too powerful. He's hitting. And so I'm really fascinated to sit, and I will go and listen to the big show to listen to what Sean and Graham had to say about this fight and the breakdown of it. I know Sean scored at 29-28 for Gamrot. I will probe his vast knowledge when I put together my rewatch. But it's a fascinating fight. It's a great fight for regardless of how you scored it, regardless of getting into the minutia of scoring. It's a great fight.
Yeah. What we saw, and let's not get away from, it wasn't just Jalen beating fuck out of Gamrot on the feet.
No,
Gamrot
for sure. Yeah.
Running pretty even for the most, and this is why it's a close fight, right? They were running pretty even.
Right.
The difference, in my opinion, was in all 3 rounds, Jalen landed something impactful that stood out to me.
Right. Agreed.
Now, I can hear, see, and agree with an argument that the accumulation of shots that Gamrot landed on Jalen were more impactful than the immediately impactful shot on that Jalen landed on Gamrot. I can see that. No problem. I can see that. There were moments in the third, especially, Gamrot landed some really nice straights that snapped Jalen's head back pretty aggressively. And so those obviously have to score and score really, really well, because that is a very immediate tell for something that's immediately impactful, right? Especially in that second round, I would love to hear from the judges that scored it for Gamrot in that second, especially Shawnee Podcasts, because there was a moment, a 25-second moment where Gamrot is backing up and looks wobbled.
Looks like he might be on the brink of being out of there.
And Jalen lands some really nice, really well found, really well sought after shots. And Gamrot survives and does really, really well and recovers really, really, really well. But that 25 to 35 seconds in that second round, I didn't see matched by Gamrot with anything else. And that's not to say he didn't do good things. That's not to say he didn't land good shots. That's not to say he wasn't effective in his striking. But he wasn't remotely close to finishing Jalen in that second, and it felt like Jalen Turner was closer to finishing in this. But overall, and this is where I kind of don't like doing this, is that it was an absolutely brilliant fight, super enjoyable. Both fighters did some gorgeous work on the feet, on the ground, the pair of them. I don't think either of them lose a spot. Gamrot is now this fighter where you go and fight him and you best be running level with him, because if not, he'll run you over.
Yeah. You best be all the way prepared. We saw what it took for Beneil Dariush to beat him in Abu Dhabi last October. We saw Arman Saryukin run level with him and lose a decision. This is what it's going to take. You have to be all the way locked in, because this dude at 32 years old, with all the experience he has, is just, he is perfect in the middle of this top 10 right now.
And again, I would have loved to have seen this fight over 5 rounds.
Yes. One fight that didn't go anywhere near 5 rounds and didn't go anywhere near even a full round was the first fight on the main card. Bo Nickel submitting Jamie Pickett, the most inevitable outcome probably in a long, long time in the UFC. My takeaway immediately on 10 things on the SevereMMA website as I was watching was that the hype is real-ish. And if you are a middleweight, now is the time to get your hands on Bo Nickel. Because as he keeps working, as he keeps growing, he's going to get better. The grappling is already really good. He's got stuff that he needs to work on. He's got the jiu-jitsu and the finishing and the submissions and all of that need to still continue to progress. But 3 fights from now, he's not going to throw a dumbass high kick that's nowhere near landing on target and fall to the ground. And against anybody else, they're going to capitalize on that moment. Whereas Jamie Pickett was so far away that he had the momentary stutter step in and then was like, ah, shit. And he got half committed. And Bo Nickel was like, cool him up. I'm going to take you down now.
So I think people aren't going to capitalize if that happens. And the reason why I say that is you see all the time not all the time, but a lot of the times, especially at the higher levels, when somebody throws something and they slip or whatever, if the fighter sees that they're not getting back up quickly, they'll swarm. But Bo was so fast to pop up. Most fighters like, fuck it, it's not worth it, right? And so I think most fighters, especially if you've signed to fight Bo Nickel, and there's every chance when you go to swarm him that what happened to Jamie Pickett is going to happen to you, where you just end up in a grappling exchange, it's probably not what they're going to be doing. And I think that for Bo Nickel, it's something that he could use to his advantage, which is he could be a bit looser on the feet, right?
100%.
He could be a little bit more aggressive because
no fear of going to the ground, no fear of being in clinch situations.
Right. One thing I will say from the very off is he has to sort the stance out. He fights like he's fighting a wrestler, like he's competing in a wrestling tournament. Like his hands were low and he was dipping as if you were to engage in a wrestling competition. And that's probably because he spent thousands of hours on a wrestling mat. And so it's kind of bred into him that when he's competing with another human, he should lean in such a way. That has to be bred out of him, right? And the only other thing I'll say, because everything else was pretty fucking beautiful, was his finishing mechanics and his positional control needs to take a slowdown. So when he jumps on the back, gorgeous, no problem. Don't go for the choke immediately.
Right.
Look for double under.
Settle in, get yourself stable.
Get yourself stable, and then look for chokes. I understand that looking for chokes in transition is what wins you fights, fine. But when he was looking for the face crank or the jaw crank on Pickett had every opportunity to escape there and just fucking chose not to because he's garbage. Then when we switched off to the head and arm, not only was it the worst defense of a head and arm choke I have ever seen in the UFC, like it was absolute heinous stuff from Jamie Pickett. Bo Nickel should have had him out of there way faster.
Right.
If you watched Bo Nickel, he went from his regular skin color to the sunburn of Valentina Shevchenko because he was squeezing for 1 minute and 10. The head and arm choke, the whole point is that you don't squeeze, you just flex your bicep.
Right.
So the reason why
you get to the position where the squeeze doesn't have to be a lot. It's just everything constricts and you're dead to rights.
Right. You're applying pressure. That's what it is, right? Because your shoulder is driving into the esophagus. Your bicep is closing one carotid artery and your head is driving your opponent's shoulder into the other carotid artery, right? Now, there was a moment where Pickett had got Bo Nickel caught in a 3/4 mount. Bo didn't do enough to deal with that situation. He only did it at the very end when he realized that maybe his arms were gassing and that Jamie Pickett actually had no fucking clue what was going on. And he eventually got the grapevine in, did what he needed to do, got his foot out, fine. But even the finishing mechanics themselves weren't great. And so just chill, keep the position you had, drive your forehead to the mat, deal with clearing your foot, and then just finish him, you know? And so you said, and you're absolutely right, the raw materials here are very exciting. Very, very exciting because he was confident. He went in, he threw a massive head kick, whether it lands or not, to have the confidence to throw a massive head kick on your UFC debut, opening up the main card on a massive card like this.
All the cameras on you.
All the cameras on you, all the attention, all the fanfare. And he goes out and is like, I might just fucking head kick knock this dude out. All right, dude. All right. Yeah. I'm here for it.
Yeah.
And then the grappling, it is what it is. He dumps him, takes his back, finishes him. Grand. Let's take a moment to just slow this down a little bit.
Yep.
Because the next fight is going to be a similar level opponent, as it should be.
Should be. Yep.
And you're going to ragdoll him too. And when you ragdoll him, let's take our time and let's work this position so we're not expending vast amounts of energy and prove to yourself that it can be done. We move on.
Yeah. Give me a slight step up in competition. We don't need to go too far. We don't need to skip 2-3 steps, but give me just a little step up. Give me somebody that's had 2 or 3 victories in the UFC, a 500 record or better inside the octagon. Because Jamie Pickett was 2-4, had lost his last 2, was clearly the sacrificial lamb. Bo Nickel did what he needed to do, got the win, looked good. Let's see what's next. It's the severe takeaways for UFC 285. E. Spencer Kite, Harry Powell. We move to the prelims, and we will get through these a little more quickly. Cody Garbrandt gets a win over Trevin Jones. And the only thing I have to say from this fight is that Cody Garbrandt is just done. He's just cooked. Like, he's just, it's just, and it's sad. I actually sat there watching it on Saturday, and especially in that third round when Trevin Jones starts to have success, because Trevin Jones finally starts to throw. I just thought this guy that turned in such a virtuosic performance against Dominic Cruz is just like, that's the only guy he beats, is the guy that is willing to not throw, and he can land 3 or 4 shots around and not engage.
Yeah. The real shame for me is it was almost like when he was in there, he was trying to tell himself that he was still the same Cody Garbrandt that was in against Tom Cruise. Like, he tried the really slick, almost like Bruce Lee-esque,
the Street Fighter low sweep. Yeah.
Yeah. And I fucking love that. When it comes off, it's absolutely gorgeous. And he also tried all the stupid footwork, weird dance stuff that he does when he's, 6 miles the other side of the cage. And Trevin Jones looks at him like, "Are you okay? Like, what are we?
Are we suddenly having a dance battle?"
Yeah, like, do I do a handstand now? Like, I don't understand. But it's it's a shame. It's a real shame for Garbrandt, because there were moments in that fight where you see that, again, still a very good athlete, picked Trevin Jones up a number of times and just dumped that dude on his head. Couple of times where he rolls shots and lands counters and looks good, but he does not seem to have any faith in his chin. And obviously,
nor should he.
Because
Trevin Jones landed 1 shot and you just saw the panic, and that turned into Trevin Jones has 60 seconds to win this fight. I saw somebody say if we scored it by pride rules, Trevin Jones wins that fight. I think that's true.
Sure. Yeah, it's sad.
It's sad.
It's a shame.
Yep. We move forward.
I got lots to say about this one.
I know, that's why we're hustling here. Dricus du Plessis gets the 2nd round corner stoppage win over Derek Brunson. Shouts to his corner for throwing in the towel. 2 instances on Saturday night where Herb Dean just continues to prove that the once great referee is just somehow not paying attention to things. This was one of them. The gum shield in the Rachmanov fight, for the longest time, if Joe Rogan doesn't point it out, Shavkat Rachmanov still doesn't have a mouthpiece. Go ahead. Go on with it.
Firstly, couldn't agree more. Brunson's team did absolutely the right thing.
Don't know what Herb Dean was waiting to see.
Look, yeah, who knows? Because Mark Goddard says something, and I found it really poignant when he said it, and it's that he said it ages ago, right? We've all heard it, but he's like, "I'm not looking for a fighter to take an overwhelming amount of damage necessarily. Sometimes it has to come to that, right? Sometimes it has to come to that, but I'm just looking for the cues of body language for when a fighter tells me,
right,
I'm done here, please, can you get me out of here?" Or he is looking for when he knows that the fighter is not going to win this fight and that there is no way that the fighter turns around to win this fight. Derek Brunson has 5 minutes of gas in him, and after that has absolutely nothing. And I'm telling you that is the saddest thing to come out of this fight card, because Derek Brunson is a far superior fighter to Dricus du Plessis. We saw it in that first round. Dricus throws dumb shots at dumb angles with dumb footwork, and Derek's like, "That's cool, bro. Watch me land straight shots on your dumb face and let me take your dumb legs down and do things to you on the ground." But when he got up from that first, Drickus was like, "Ooh, Jesus, that was a tough round," and Derek was like, "I'd like to go home now, please."
Right. I just ran the Boston Marathon and I am exhausted.
And just, I don't know what happened to Derek Brunson from 3 fights ago to now, but that man needs to retire now. And I know we shouldn't say this, and I know it's a fighter's choice, but when you are at the end of the fight, lying on the floor because you're so not even damaged, you're so exhausted that you cannot muster the energy to get to your stool as a professional mixed martial artist, we have a big old problem.
Well, and he had talked about it as well. I believe before the Cannonier fight, he had said, like, I got 2 left. I'm trying to get to this title because I got 2 or 3 max left. I don't want to put my family through seeing me in bad spots. And then the same thing happened in the Cannonier fight, where he looks good for that first 5 minutes. And then Cannonier's like, man, I should turn it up here. I should maybe get after this guy because he looks a little tired. What do we do with Dricus du Plessis? This is my question. Because for all of the things that you correctly state, it never looks pretty. It looks like there are big gaping holes for somebody to exploit. The man is 5-0 in the UFC with 4 finishes, and he's won like 8 straight overall. He's 19-2 for his career. Who do you put him in there with? Is it Sean Strickland? Is it Paulo Costa? Yeah, get him in there with another meathead and see what happens.
Yeah, so you either do, for me, you either do Jack Hermansson, and you let Jack Hermansson double leg that dude straight through the door and back.
I'm in.
House.
Yeah, I'm in. You don't have to say more.
Okay.
You don't have to say more because, like, the Paulo Costa one is you put another big body in there and they swing on each other. But I would rather see the Jack Hermansson piece because I want to see the technical tests more than I want to see the rock'em sock'em robots of Paulo Costa.
Yeah, I think Jack Hermansson would fucking maul Dricus du Plessis.
So do I. Let's see it. Sean Shelby McMaynard, if you're watching, as always, we're here to help. Amanda Ribas gets a unanimous decision win over Viviane Araújo. You're making crazy faces. Go on then.
Let's go. Good, dude. She looked good.
She's getting confident on the feet. It's still a little awkward and a little like herky-jerky at times. And the chin needs to get tucked a little bit more and the hands need to come up. Like if she could take a little bit of the Alexa Grasso, keep it up here, I'm even more excited. But she beat Viviane Araújo in the spots that I thought would be Vivi's most successful pieces. And that excites me.
Right. It feels to me like she may just be a 500 fighter, right? And that she wins one, she loses one, she wins. That's what that means, right?
Correct.
Excellent. Look at me with American terms. She may just be that, right? She may go in, have a great performance against somebody like Viviane Araújo, pulls the Caitlin Chookagian. These things happen. Like whatever.
It's the Jeremy Stevens thing that we talk about all the time of like somebody's got to be the 7th best, right? You're just stuck there. And when you fight the one person ahead of you, they beat you and you fight the person behind you.
Very possible. I think, though, this could finally be on a performance like that against somebody like Viviane Araújo. And Sean has talked so highly about Viviane Araújo for a long, long time, and I agree with him. Ribas hurts her on the feet and then fucking dominates her on the ground. Dominates her. The only time she was remotely in trouble was that armbar setup at the end, right? And to be honest, it looked tight. I don't think it was as tight as it looked because she'd managed to get a really solid cable grip together and she'd stacked enough and she'd managed to turn her arm enough that if Vivian had been able to break the grip, we could have had problems. But it felt like because the grip was not budging at all, it was always likely that gravity is going to help you here and she's going to be able to thumb that elbow out enough. But other than that, I mean, what a performance. Yes, I agree with everything you've said, but to go and to hurt Vivian Araujo on the feet multiple times with straight shots, clean shots, to mix it up with variety, to not do the wild, mad spinning shit that gets you in trouble.
Right.
Just to land leg kicks, land teeps, land hooks.
Kept it relatively clean, kept it relatively simple.
Sign me the fuck up.
And she's someone that, if this is a step forward, if this is the putting it all together that we talk about all the time, she's someone that has absolute star potential for the UFC, because she is just a ball of energy. She is super affable. She speaks well. All of these things. Away we go. Marc-Andre Barrios beat Julian Marquez. It's getting this one. Because it's two dudes. It was the one fight on the card that we said, it's just a fight. It's two dudes that are middle of the road middleweights. One of them's going to get tired. One of them's going to get stopped. We're going to see who it was. The Canadian wins. The American loses. Away we go. Brings us to Ian Gary, who gets a third round stoppage win over Song Kenan. It's a very good performance. Save for the part where he gets clipped and almost gets finished. And if Song Kenan was smart and let him up, maybe we're having a different conversation. But it's also sort of very much what I wanted to see from Ian Gary. I wanted to see a little bit more of the get after it. And the finish was absolutely beautiful. Just like, talk about recognizing, I have this guy hurt, and now we throttle up and we get him out of here. We don't give him a chance to recover. That part was beautiful. Kiss my ass for posting his face on your Instagram afterwards. I hear what you're saying in your replies to people of, this is my art, this is my canvas, this is what I work for, blah, 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 blah. Save it. Look at it yourself at home and be proud. But otherwise, a very good night for Ian Gary.
I don't know whether Ian posted that himself. I have no idea. I didn't personally. It wasn't really to my taste personally. It didn't really fit with what Ian had been doing in Fight Week with Song Kenan. Anyway, right.
And he said all of that, and sure, fine, I get it, whatever. But just like, if you're having to really defend it and explain it, it was probably not the right thing to post.
The most impressive thing to me was we saw Ian allow his ego out. And we mentioned it about Johnny Bones Jones. Ian, after getting dropped, was like, motherfucker, there's no way. There's no way. This isn't happening. No, sir. And from the moment he got dropped, he recovered fantastically well, by the way. Did exactly what he needed to do, built a turtle, took the shots he needed to take to get back up to the cage, kept himself defensively aware. The moment Song Kenan allowed him space to get out by going from the body lock to opening up on that left hook, Ian found his way out, and then it was gas pedal. Gas pedal, gas pedal, gas pedal. Something that I had not seen in the Gabe Green fight and the Darian Weeks fight was Ian looked like he looked in Cage Warriors, which was he went in there and was just like, dudes, you're not on my fucking level. Like, you're really not. And I'm going to show you. He won beautiful technical displays where he didn't really get hit, did a lot of hitting, did some really nice footwork stuff, showed us a bit of grappling. But against Song Kenan, he was like, look, motherfucker, you've just come in here and tried to show me that you're better than me. Now it's gas pedal time. And the fluidity to the striking, the brutal and finishing intents to the striking in the second and the third was the most exciting thing I have seen from Ian Gary in a cage since his performance against Jack Grant in Cage Warriors. If we can take that confidence and we can have it, we don't have to have it from second one. Feel free to build into fights if you want, no problem.
Right.
If I can see more of that, this is why Shawnee and the rest of us were giving mad hype to Ian Gary before. The second and third round performance is exactly why.
Who do you want to see next? I know you've thought about it.
I want Brian Barberena. That fight, because if there's a man that will hurt Ian Gary and then put it on him, is Brian Barberena. And it's also a man that is somebody who Ian, given the performance in the second and the third, could style on Brian Barberena.
Yep.
So that's a name. It's the veteran test. Give me that.
Bam Bam fights in 2 weeks' time in London against Gunny Nelson. That would be an amazing sort of step up and an amazing opportunity. Win or lose, I think it's a good fight. I think it's a fight that makes sense. It'd be really good for Ian Gary if Brian Barberina gets a win over Gunnar Nelson in a couple of weeks.
And then let's do Gunny Nelson and Ian Gary at the end of the year.
Just cuz?
Just why not? Like, as he faced a grappler? No. Gunny or grapple? Let's see it.
All right. Fair enough. We'll speed through the rest of these because we've spent 90 minutes talking about this card already. Cameron Simon gets a majority decision win over Leomano Martinez for the second consecutive fight. The South African loses a point, kicks Mana Martinez in the balls twice. Also could have lost a point in the third round for an eye poke. You don't want to, like we joked pre-recording that, hey, lose, do all the fouling if it's not going to cost you. And if you can still win fights, then just keep at it. He certainly doesn't want to do that. It's another good performance for the 22-year-old South African. I still am very high on him as a prospect. He needs to clean it up a little. Continue him just at this pace. There's no need to rush it. He's 22 years old. Tabitha Ricci gets a second round submission win over Jessica Penne. This was a eye-opening performance for me. I was a little bit suspect on Ricci coming in, given that she hadn't fought great competition in my estimation. Not that Jessica Penne is great competition, but she ran through Jessica Penne and dominated this fight. Maybe some of that is Penne is now 40 and the age is really starting to show, though she looked pretty good at points in the last couple of years. Tabitha Ricci is one to keep an eye on at strawweight. This was a good finish. This was a good performance.
For the grapplings, yes.
Yeah.
Needs a lot of work on the feet.
For sure.
And that's fine, you know, but a 40-year-old Jessica Penne in the second round was piecing her up a touch with those straight shots and whatever. Now, when we got to the ground, it was, and again, we got to remember Jessica Penne is supposed to be the grappler.
She's a legitimate black belt. Yeah. Right.
And when the armbar set up, Jessica Penne looked like she'd never seen it before. And again, that's not saying anything about Penne. I thought it was a really creative setup, really nice, really interesting. But it felt like the moment that Tabitha posted on the head and started to turn the corner, Penne was like, oh, fuck, I've left my arm out. And that point, it's way too late.
Right.
Yeah, really impressive from Ricci. Really impressive.
Certainly needs to work on the striking, but I do think there are spots for specialists still in the female weight classes. She can do some of the Mackenzie Dernish things of just get into my grappling and have enough success that it continues to propel her forward. I wouldn't mind seeing that fight either. Farid Basharat gets his debut victory over Damon Blackshear, 29-28 across the board. Very similar to his brother Javid's win in his debut against Trevin Jones. Just a good, solid overall performance. Wasn't a, oh my God, blow the doors off you victory, but a good win over a good opponent. And we just keep moving forward.
Blackshear really impressed me. Really took the fight to Farid. There were some really interesting grappling spots where, you know, he took Farid down and maybe made a couple of mistakes with the way that he controlled Farid, and Farid just read them really, really well and made his way back to the feet. But on the feet, I thought it was even enough. Really was even enough. But when Farid gets into, you know, offensive grappling cycles, it's really, really hard to stop them. And look, I was very impressed by Blackshear. I think
he's better than his 0-1-1 record.
That's what I was literally about to say. Like, he's way better than his 0-1-1 record, his 8-5 record, or whatever he's got.
Right.
That's a guy I would not mind seeing in the UFC. Continuing on.
Right.
Maybe those two performances won't grant him that, but I really, really wouldn't mind seeing him in the division. I think he adds something. For Farid, I think a little more confidence would be good. Yep. I thought Javid performed way better against Trevin Jones than Javid did against Blackshear. I felt like the Blackshear performance, like Blackshear was way more in it than Trevin Jones was. Trevin Jones was just circling the outside of the cage and Javid was just punting the fucking head off him.
I just mean it's simply from wasn't the thing where you jumped out and were like, this is the guy that all the hype was about.
Right. And I think both of them as brothers, they're not massive risk takers.
No.
They are very much we're going in here, we're super clean, we're super tidy, we're really good grapplers, and we're going to win fights. And that may be to their detriment as they climb to the upper echelons of the division, because there are guys that will take risks. But for now, really, really tidy to have both of them in, people to watch.
Agreed. I know you enjoyed the opener, like Radzhabov and Esteban Ribovic. These two boys got after it for 15 minutes. They were dog tired and still getting after it in the waning moments of the fight. Good win for Loic Radzhabov. I do think Esteban Ribovic is a guy that, similar to what we're saying about Damone Blackshear, this is a dude that can stick around and be at the very least, and I think I said it in 10 things, my opening point was like, at the very least, this dude is an all-action entertainment machine going forward. And if he continues to progress and grow and develop and learn and whatever, he can move forward. Because this was a competitive, entertaining, fun fight to kick off.
The fans won this one. The fans won this one. Like, Ignacio Bahamondes is what Esteban Ribovic reminds me of. Like, South American, comes in, will just fucking put it all on the line, doesn't really give a shit about his brain health, can kind of do it everywhere, right?
Right.
Was very, very impressed with Radzovic's adjustments. Radzhabov. Thank you. Radzhabov's adjustments. His wrestling is obviously great. And at some points it looked like he'd never striked before. And then other times he had some really gorgeous head movement and some really lovely uppercut counters. Right. Cracks a bit, does some things. But yeah, fucking fantastic 15 minutes of fighting to open a card up. Really good stuff.
This was a terrific card. We talked about it going in, that this was cards like this are why we have some of the duds beforehand. There has to be a push and pull and a give and take. This was the best card on paper of the year. This was the best card in delivery of the year. We could probably do another 90 minutes going through this with even more detail, but we have things to do, places to go. You have training to get to. I have stories and other videos that I need to record. It's a lovely day out. My dog needs to go for a walk. This was amazing. This was a great night of fights. I need to rewatch Mateusz Gamrot and Jalen Turner this afternoon is what I need to do. But this was a great night of fights. This is the reminder, as Shawnee and Graham talked about on the Big Show. This night is the reminder of why this sport can be so special, of why there are moments where we just are in awe of these athletes and get so hype for these events. And I'm glad we had it.
It's just everything that you want. Yeah. Right? From top to bottom. Okay, could we scratch out Marquez and Marc-Antoine Barrio? It was actually a fine fight.
Yeah, it was entertaining. It's just, yeah.
But other than that, every single fight delivered. It delivered a storyline at the very least.
Gave us something to talk about.
That's the only thing that you don't have from Marquez and Marc-Antoine Barrio. I watched it. I enjoyed the fight. I didn't have complaints about it. Correct. But as you said, 2 middleweights, just middleweighting. And that's like, fine, no problem. But I was so impressed with this card. It delivered brilliant fights, brilliant storylines, and it's exactly why we love MMA.
You delivered brilliant takeaways, as you always do. SevereMMA takeaways for UFC 285. He has been Harry Powell. I have been E. Spencer Kite. Follow him at BJJ_Harry Powell. Follow me at Spencer Kite. Follow all the lads on Twitter. Sign up for the Patreon. We're still early in the month. Always worth the money. Best URL in the business, SevereMMA.com/pints. We will be back next Tuesday to discuss the takeaways from UFC Las Vegas. I still haven't figured out what I'm going to call it because it's not an Apex show, but they're still in Las Vegas. So I think I'm going with UFC Las Vegas, headlined by Piotr Jan and Merab Dvalishvili. We get the Nikita Krylov-Ryan Spann fight thrown in there. Some good matchups on that card. We will have lots to discuss, I am sure. Go check out the Severe Spotlight. It is on the new heavyweight champion, Johnny Bones Jones. I will be back throughout the week with more videos leading into UFC Las Vegas. But for now, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We love you. We appreciate you. And we'll see you next week.